Recording in progress.
Oh, sorry.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sheila O'Grady, and I am the Executive Director of the Citizen Advocacy Center. We are a group that's located in Elmhurst, and we have the mission of helping folks like yourselves who are trying to figure out aspects of local government, local advocacy, and we do research and presentations and try to help people become more active in their local government. So Nicole reached out to us and asked us to put together a presentation on what you guys can do to put together a referendum if the Senate bill in question about home rule passes. So part of our programming is every summer we host a class of law students, college students, and high school students. Oh, I do have someone in the waiting. So every summer we host a class of students from high school through law school. And this summer, one of our students is Lucas Mara, and he is going to be giving this presentation. I would also like to add
That's what I'm trying to do, like
I'm going to add the disclaimer that Lucas is a law student, and so none of this is to be taken as legal advice. This is just generic information. If you would like specific legal advice from a lawyer, my contact info will be at the end of the slide, and you can always reach out to me directly. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Lucas.
All right. Thank you, Sheila. So yeah, my name is Lucas Mara. I'm a law student at the University of Minnesota Law School, and I'm actually originally from here in the western suburbs and from Downers Grove, Illinois. So I'm happy to meet you all, and hopefully we can have a nice presentation tonight here. So let me get this presentation shared first of all. One moment here. Let's read this. Share. And just let me know if there's any issues with the screen share at any point, or if I cut out, feel free just to drop something in the chat. So, barring anything else like that, we're ready to get started. So, welcome everybody. Today we're going to be talking about a little bit about home rule, but also a lot about filing local referendums and this Senate bill that we've been talking about so much. So, getting started here, we're going to talk a little bit first about home rule. So, I think everyone in this chat is broadly knowledgeable about home rule, but as a quick refresher, home rule allows local governments to exercise any power and perform any function pertaining to its government and affairs without needing legislative approval. So what this means is that these home rule municipalities do not need express approval from the state government to do things like tax, incur debt, things of that nature. Now, in order to become a home rule unit, the two main ways of doing it are either by gaining 25,000 residents or by having a referendum to gain these powers. And then any municipality that already has home rule powers can revoke them by later referendum. So a quick overview of home rule powers for those that have it. The most significant part of this all is taxation, is their broadest power. And this is because home rule units are allowed to tax without first holding a referendum, unlike non-home rule units. These can prevent increases to property taxes, but likely these increased taxes, such as like sales taxes, things like hotel taxes and natural gas taxes, among many others. As I mentioned before, there's also some additional rights to debt. There's less of a much higher debt limit for home rule municipalities. They have broader rights to license businesses and to monitor them. And they're also able to make a lot of local ordinances much more broadly than a lot of non-home rule units. So this is things like landlord-tenants relations and renters' rights and historical preservation that they're able to do. So with this overview kind of here, we can move on to Senate Bill 4065 here. And this Senate bill would have allowed home rule units to gain home rule or non-home rule units to gain home rule powers via ordinance. This is instead of the normal process that we have currently of needing a referendum in order to gain home rule powers. Now, it's important to note that this process wouldn't have been automatic under the Senate bill, and it would have to be adopted by that town council. So there still could be citizen input and prevention of such an ordinance before it gets into power, but it does give them much more flexibility to pass that without first asking the residents. So in this specific bill, it would have allowed any municipality over 5,000 residents to pass such an ordinance to their municipal government. And this would have impacted 249 municipalities in Illinois. Now, 86 of these already have home rule powers, but there's a lot of smaller communities and smaller suburbs, especially in the Chicagoland area, that would be impacted by this if it does pass. Now, fortunately, this bill didn't pass through in the current legislative session, which ended at the end of May. But there's still this chance that it could be reintroduced in future sessions in 2027 or in 2028. It might not look exactly the same, but a similar idea could go through. And so, kind of basing off of that, we can talk about some of the options that residents have if their municipality were to enact a home rule ordinance. So, the two main methods the bill suggests to get rid of these home rule powers is either by voting out your local municipal council and putting in councilors that are more friendly to the idea of revoking these powers. So that would be revoking that ordinance that originally gave them the powers. Or you can also hold a home rule referendum in the first place. So a lot of this process that we're going to go into, you could hold a referendum basically to revoke this ordinance that gives a municipality home rule powers itself. And so we can kind of now go into the process of how a group of citizens can make a citizen-led referendum and put that on their ballot. So to create a local referendum, the most important part is the creation of a petition and the fact that this petition needs to get submitted to a municipal clerk within that municipality. So to the Westchester, the village clerk in Westchester, or to Broadview or any other local clerk in a city. So the most important part of this petition is that it must have signatures at least 8% of the votes for governor in the last election in the municipality. So I did some quick math based off of the 2022 election. Obviously, we're coming up to the 2026 election now, and these numbers will change. But based off of those, Westchester currently need somewhere in the ballpark of 530 signatures, and Broadview would need around 202 signatures. So it will require probably a good organizing effort, but it will be feasible. Also to note with this, and I think this was noted in the Facebook invite itself, but it probably is good. This is just the bare floor of what the signature should be. So it's probably good to get an additional 50 or 100 signatures just to beat any challenges to any signatures or make sure that there's no issues with the signatures that are on there. Additionally, there's two other rules along with creating a local referendum. First is that the petition itself must be filed with the village clerk at latest 92 days before the next election. So, for example, for this next election, which I believe is in November, it would be sometime in probably this summer that you would have to get that petition into them. And then additionally, these petitions cannot be filed more than a year before the election. So, for instance, if this wanted to be a question on the 2028 ballot, this couldn't be filed until sometime during either late 2027 or early 2028. So that's just an important thing to kind of gauge for, building up these coalitions and building up some of this ability and capacity to try to get signatures out there. So moving on to it, the important part of this whole kind of structure is the petition itself. Now, the petition has some specific requirements based off of the Illinois statutes. To start, there needs to be a header on each of the sheets. And there was an example I know shown in the Facebook invite of one that could be used for the village of Westchester. The most important things that need to be included in this header are just information regarding the referendum in the first place. So explaining that it's a home rule referendum and that it would impact the home rule status in the village itself. Second, it has to specify where that this petition will be impacting. So, for instance, this would say it would impact the village of Westchester specifically in Illinois, or Broadview, or any other municipality that wants to make such a referendum. And finally, the petition should include the election that this referendum will appear on or is trying to appear on. So, for instance, if it was 2028, you would probably write the November, I don't know the exact, but probably around the November 8th, 2028 election. Additionally, these headings on the tops of the petition forms should all be identical as much as possible. So kind of having a standard form is probably good for this. Additionally, signatures themselves for these petitions, they have to be done in person, and they also must contain the full address of the signer. This is mostly done to prevent things like fraud and things like that, but it's good to make sure that you cannot do signatures either by proxy for people signing for each other or do them online in some form. They have to be done physically in paper. An additional requirement with this too is that there's a person known as a circulator who will be circulating these sheets around the community. That person must also be physically present when the sheet is signed by the person. So the sheets kind of can't be passed around or mailed or given around. A person needs to be present who's working with building this petition. Finally, just as kind of a logistical requirement, the state requires that the sheets be securely bound and consecutively numbered. This typically means that there's a little place at the bottom of the sheet to write a page number in so they can be ordered. And then there's usually a location placed where the sheets will get stapled eventually once the petition is complete. And so last few kind of requirements here. First of all, the sheets that are used in the petition itself must be the original sheets that people were actually signing and not a photocopy or some other reproduction of the sheets. This is, again, a thing with the government just to prevent fraud and other allegations like that. So if you do want to keep a copy for your internal records, that should be a copy of the original, not the original itself. That is the one that has to get filed with the municipal clerk. Finally, these sheets also all have to include a footer. And so this footer contains the term of art is a circulator statement, but this basically is just an affirmation that the person was present with all the people who signed the sheet and that they also guarantee that all the signatures are genuine and from people who were actually registered to vote within the municipality itself. Finally, the statement at the bottom must also get notarized, either by a notary through the state or through public officials. So that basically that is an official sheet and that you're basically swearing that all the signatures are genuine at the price of legal consequences. One last thing to note too is that all the people who signed the petition obviously must be from the municipality. So it's important to make sure that the people who are actually signing the sheet, when they include their address, make sure that they actually live within the municipality that you're trying to get this home rule referendum for. Otherwise, their signature will not be counted for that total. Additionally, make sure that people list their address as it is for their voter registration. Otherwise, this will it can create some mismatches, and they might throw out some of the signatures if it doesn't perfectly match. So going here, here's an example of a notary sheet from the Electoral Commission in Illinois, from the state government of Illinois. I know that there was an example posted in the Facebook group. This is just another example, so you can see what the language kind of looks like. We'll chat here. And yes, we will be, we'll definitely be sharing the recording. We might be able to share the PowerPoint too later on. So we can organize that out later with some of the organizers here. So just going over this real quick, this is what the header typically looks like. This will usually be filled out and be a standard form for the petition. This is just one that you could fill in as a form from the state government, but it needs to show the location where this is going to be. It needs to list what election that this referendum will take place in. And it also needs to explain what the referendum will be about. So this is not a form for a referendum, but what would typically be stated is that this will be a home rule referendum determining whether or not the Village of Westchester will retain home rule powers or will revoke home rule powers. Next here. Oop, I need to click back on here, sorry. This is an example of a signature section from one of these sheets. So it is not required to have the printed name, but there must be the voter's signature, and there also must be the full address. So this must include the street address of the person's location of residence, and then it should include the town they live in, and this will be mostly the same. For example, if you're doing Westchester, these should all say Westchester, and the county should also all be the same. It should all be from Cook County. So that's an example of what this can look like. And then finally, this is an example of what the footer looks like. Now, this will be most important for the people who are organizing the creation of this petition. So many of the people here, for example, could be circulators. There can be more than one circulator for these petitions. And what this essentially means is that you just have to sign off on it, the petition. You have to give your address, and then you have to basically swear an oath that all the signatures here are correct to the best of your knowledge. So this is where the notary comes in, just to ensure that the sheet is official, because this is going to get registered with the government for an elected purpose. Some final notes too about the petition. First of all, we reviewed both Broadview and Westchester's local municipal codes, and there weren't any additional requirements that we saw for filing a petition or filing a referendum with the village government or the municipal governments of both towns. So there shouldn't be any additional issues there. However, it's probably a good idea to be working in close cooperations with your village clerk's office just to make sure that everything seems to be proper and that there isn't anything that they can try to throw out this petition with or anything that's invalid. Second of all, another important thing to mention is just this on signature collection itself. A good way to kind of advocate and get these signatures out is definitely by going to some of these recurrent local events, especially because you need signatures only from your municipality. Some of the events we know that are coming up, there's a lot of Juneteenth celebrations in Westchester, obviously. So things like that of that nature in the future, things like 4th of July parades, parties in the park, national nights out. These sorts of events are good places to try to collect signatures or try to spread the word about these things, to do some community building in order to gain this list of signatures. So look for a lot of local locations where there are public events or there are a lot of public gatherings such as farmers markets, and those are good places to try to collect signatures. So coming up from all this, that should be a general overview of the process of making a referendum. We are free and available to get any questions. Again, here we have our executive director's contact information, her email, and our office phone number. If you need any legal advice specifically, definitely feel free to contact us or reach out to Sheila here now in the chat. Otherwise, we are here and available to answer any of the questions you have, either involving this new Senate bill or about the process of making a local referendum. Thank you.
So Lucas, we do have one question in the general chat. I was sent a private question. So if you want to address the general one first, and then I'll let you know the second question.
Okay, I can start with Diane's question here about binding and non-binding referenda. So there are—
So for the record, because this is being recorded, the question
Yes.
is, can you speak to whether these are binding or non-binding referenda? Is the process the same?
Yes. So the Illinois Electoral Code, most citizen-initiated referenda tend to be these advisory or non-binding referendums. However, because home rule powers themselves, the whole section of the Constitution dealing with it, which is Article 7, that all the referendums that you can do regarding, merging towns or giving home rule powers, those ones do have binding effect on the villages. So these petitions would be binding on the towns that they are applying to, based on the fact that it's dealing with home rule itself.
So I'm going to speak a little more on that. It's kind of interesting. The way the Senate bill was written was not clear because there are specific rules that pertain to municipalities that are opting out of home rule status. It's not clear whether those rules would also apply to referendum if that Senate bill is passed. They put in the Senate bill that you can do the referendum, but they didn't specify whether that referendum, it's not specified in the bill of the in the language of the bill itself, which set of rules it would fall under. So presumably if they put it in there as a way of opting out, they intended it to be binding. However, it's unclear. The statute itself has a lot of quirks and questions, but it also has not passed yet. So there's time if it comes back in the next legislative session to hopefully get that clarified before it's passed. And then the other question we have is, can we have a referendum on the consolidated election ballot in April? You mentioned November elections, but there's going to be an election in April.
The main factor of that is just that 92-day deadline before the election itself. I would need to look at a calendar to figure out exactly what day that would be, but that probably is at the very beginning of the month of at the very beginning of 2027. I assume you could, but it would definitely be maybe a little bit of an uphill battle. I also will note that Westchester and Broadview, they both currently don't have home rule powers. And so there isn't really a need to have a referendum yet. The main concern would be that if this Senate bill does pass in a future year, so in 2027 or in 2028's legislative sessions, then that could be more of a concern going forward. So this might be something where it might not be necessarily coming straight to the front, but because the village doesn't already have those powers, there's not really a need yet to have that referendum. But if there was a desire, it would be sometime by early 2027.
So the question in the chat is, would it help basically to file a preventative referendum before the bill is passed? Or is it better to wait and see if the bill is passed?
I think it depends. I think it depends a lot on what kind of municipality it's in. I know, for example, the city of Rockford, which is a bit far away, but they currently don't have home rule.
Well, we're talking specifically about Westchester.
But yeah, but for Westchester, because Westchester is currently, I believe, around 16, 17,000 residents, they're probably not going to gain automatic home rule status in the future, and they would only be able to gain it by referendum. And based off of this, it seems that that would be generally opposed. I think you can file a preventative referendum if you are very concerned that this bill will pass or that you do not want the home rule powers to happen. But the main thing with that is that those kinds of referendums for the home rule or other referendums, they do have a certain time limit where they get locked out. So I believe it's 29 for normal referendums, and then it can be 49 for home rule. But again, it's a little bit unclear based on the Senate bill. So you could do it, and it would mean the town couldn't pass that likely for that period of time. But it might be better to do it when this bill, it might be closer to being passed.
I will also say we didn't specifically look into the question of it as a preventative referendum,
Mhm.
but that's something that we can look and see if other municipalities in the area have passed preferendum. I cannot talk today. Preventative referenda. That is hard to say. We can do a survey and see if there are any local municipalities that have done that. I know Villa Park did the opposite. They automatically became a home rule municipality and by referenda opted out. That's
Mhm.
not quite what the situation would be here because you wouldn't automatically become a home rule municipality, but it may be worth, uh, I can do some additional research into what the circumstances were when that happened in Villa Park. If that,
Mhm.
Lucas, do you know if that was recent or was that a while ago?
The Villa Park one was a while ago. I think they had another referendum later on where they gained home rule powers back. I'd have to check that again to be clear. I know the one that isn't right now in the Chicagoland area is Lamont. They have 42,000 residents and they don't have home rule right now based off of one of these referendums. I think that was back in 1980, if I remember correctly. So yeah, you can get these referendum passed, but this is probably I would say like we probably need to do more research on this, but there isn't a ton of precedence, I think, on the preventative side of this. I think you definitely can, and it would definitely signal, I think, to your town council that this does not want to happen, that the residents don't want this to happen. And I think there is value in doing that. Yeah, I think the main thing is just like make sure that community resources are used in a way that would probably support what the community really wants. So that might be talking more with the village council, or maybe even getting the village council to pass like a resolution saying that they would not pass this, or things along that nature as well. There are so many options I think that can happen, especially without the bill being passed yet.
Any other questions? Well, I want to thank all of you for attending the present. Oh, hold on. Um,
Oh, sorry. When I said 49 and 29, that was months, not days, to be clear. So usually I think it's usually meant to lock it out for like the next general election or the next two general elections is what they meant by that.
uh, so I would like to conclude by inviting all of you to our open house. It's going to be next week at 5 p.m. We are located at 188 Industrial Drive in Elmhurst, and we are Suite 106. Feel free to stop by for as little or as long as you want to learn more about the center and the kind of work that we're doing. We would love to chat in person. And if you have any questions or other issues of civic concern that you would like assistance with, please feel free to give us a call or send me an email at any time. Oh, what day next week? That would help, wouldn't it? It's a week from today, Thursday the 25th.
Mhm.
I believe it starts at 5.
I think that sounds correct. Yeah.
Yeah, 5 to 7.
Mhm.
But like I said, you can stop by for as little or as long as you want. The event should be on our website. How do we receive this recording? I am going to send the recording and the slides to Nicole, and she can, if you, Nicole, do you have the contact info for everyone who's here?
I will get a hold of everybody. Yes, I think so.
Okay,
And
I think that's
most
the
know how to
easiest way
get
to
it.
do it.
Yeah, I'll probably put it on Facebook, or I'll figure something out. Is if that works out okay for everybody.
Mhm.